All right, let's go for it.
All right.
Couple quick logistics. New shippers, connect with your mentors. Who's been dropping the chat? Who's been talking to their mentor? Have they been helpful answering your questions, helping you keep your ship sailing? The mentors are awesome. They're all part of the Captain's Table and our awesome Mentorship Academy. When you join the Captain's Table, you'll have a chance to become a mentor for future Ship 30 cohorts. It's one of our favorite programs. Susie is doing a tremendous job. Our admirals are doing a tremendous job. So shout out to everyone whose mentor is helping them sail smoothly. We really love that. And we think it's a very special and unique part of the Captain's Table that you get to come back for future cohorts, help new shippers unlock all the amazing benefits that you've unlocked as well. Complete the writing goal survey if you haven't already. That was in your inbox after you claim the 7th badge. We want to know more about your long-term aspirations, what you're currently struggling with, all that good stuff, so we can continue to help you. Keep an eye out for early Captain's Table invitations. Could be Wednesday, could be Thursday. Not sure. Just keep an eye on your inbox. Keep an eye on your Twitter DMs. We got some fun stuff coming. And then next live call, Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern, Analytics 101. That's all on the logistics front. Cole, you think I missed anything?
No, just that when we get into the analytics, that's where you're really going to start to see where the opportunities are hiding. That's always the session where everyone walks in going, I don't have any analytics. And then you leave and you go, oh, I have a lot of data and analytics to play with. So don't miss that one if you can.
The most important part of the entire live session. We got our leaderboard. Let's see these names. Look at all those badges. We're reaching the home stretch. The home stretch to collect every badge and claim that ever so sweet Hall of Fame shipper badge at the very end that you only get when you complete every single badge. Keep it up. Look at those great names on the board. A lot of M's. I think M is the most popular.
I think so too.
Shout out the M's or the J's.
Yeah.
M's or J's. Definitely a lot of names with M and J.
I was going to say the C's and the D's were crushing it, but I think the M's might take first place here.
We got the J crew. There we go. Awesome. One more.
We lost a Z. Last session we had 3 Z's. Now we're down to 2. So Zach and Zlatko,
we lost a Z. These are sleeping. All right. What are we giving away today? It says 1, but I think we're going with 2. 2 lifetime TypeShare Premier unlocks. Every template, everything. We already got people dropping shit in the chat. That's amazing. All right, we're going to actually mix it up a little bit today. We're not even going to draw numbers. We're not going to draw numbers.
I like where this is going.
The 5th and 9th person to drop doubloon in the chat, and you have to spell it right. 5th and 9th doubloon, and you have to spell it right. That's it. All right, there we go. Hold up. No, 5th. I gotta scroll up. All right. So the official spelling of doubloon is Doubloon. So 5th and 9th to spell doubloon. We got 1. That's an incorrect. 2, 3, incorrect. 4, 5. First one, Mary, Shadius. I don't know. It says Mary. Mary, congrats. 6, 7, 8, 9. Carlos, Accioli, Carlos and Mary. Amazing stuff. There we go. We're always mixing it up around here. Congrats. You're not only the best spellers. Yes, Mary, Arch Atlas. And then Corey. Or Carlos Accioli. There we go. Bang. 2 lifetime TypeShare Premiers. That's a lot. We're going to throw a lot of stuff in a TypeShare Premier.
I didn't know how to spell doubloon.
That's the key. You got to both be a good speller and a quick typer and a little bit of luck. Congrats, Mary. Congrats, Carlos. Awesome stuff. Way to go.
I like that method better. We should stick.
It's a little bit more electric. It's a little bit more.
I like it. All right, couple shout outs. This one made me smile. If you haven't had this happen to you yet, when you start writing on the internet, what's going to happen is you're going to run into someone in real life who goes, hey, you're that person. And you go, what do you mean? They go, I read your stuff on the internet. And it's a really surreal experience. So Ian got to experience that for the first time. Someone said, I've seen your LinkedIn posts on mental health. It's great that you're writing on that subject. Very cool. Every time that happens, I always smile. I think that's such a cool outcome. This is another great one. What's the easiest way to get the attention of someone or a company? Go write about them. Chances are, especially if they're a company that doesn't have a huge social media following, they probably see the notification because they just don't have that many notifications, right? So it could be a huge business too, but I noticed for small and medium-sized businesses, if you want to get their attention, write about them. Chances are they're going to see it. Prep the page works. Not a day goes by where I don't do this. I am such a firm believer in using a skeleton for your writing first and then coloring in and filling it in as you go. Courtney, I'm glad that this worked for you. Throw in the chat, have you been using that prep the page format? Do you start with the working title, get your main points, maybe throw some bullets and then start the writing process? Yeah, it's one of those, once you do it, you will never write the same way ever again. It saves so much time. And then from 9 to 90, right? That's not, oh, I only have 90 followers. That's a literal 10x, And again, imagine 90 people in a room. If you had to wake up tomorrow and give a speech in front of 90 people, you'd be sweating a little bit, So don't take these numbers for granted just because we're used to, oh, if I don't have 10 million followers, it doesn't matter, right? No, it does matter. That's a 10x. You should celebrate that. Nice work, Mary.
Boom. All right. A quick update on where we are. Who is perfect on the course checklist? Going down that list one by one, checking off your boxes, writing every single day, claiming all your badges. Hey, we laid it out on the very, very first day of onboarding week. So if you've been following that checklist, you're doing a good job. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. How we're getting our next badge, you are going to comment a link to your first or next Twitter thread or Twitter thread idea underneath this live session. And then there's also a text-based curriculum. We'd love to know who's reading the text-based curriculum after the live call to kind of reinforce their learnings. That's a new addition to this cohort. You finding it valuable? Awesome. So you both get the video, you get the text. It's a new upgrade. We're always making upgrades here. And then the deep dive is very good from this one. It's a deep dive into writing the ever so important lead-in tweet, and it works for LinkedIn as well. So deep dive, text-based, live session, all that, you get it all here. So keep on learning.
Got everything you need. So today we're going to go through, these are kind of the 5 big ideas we want to give you. The first is the difference between Twitter threads and atomic essays. Talk through that. Second is how you assemble Twitter threads and LinkedIn posts. There's kind of a specific architecture that you're supposed to use. It just makes it easy for readers to skim their way through. We're going to talk about the lead-in. So the lead-in for a Twitter thread, the lead-in for a LinkedIn post, the first 5 lines are the most important part of everything you write. And if you nail those, it works well. And if you don't nail those, it doesn't matter how good the content is, it's not going to go. Fourth is we're going to go over this, kind of the recap, the end of your post, how you can summarize things for readers to make it easy to share, make it easy to bookmark, and then how to send readers somewhere else. So the CTA, if you don't know what CTA stands for, it stands for call to action. So where are you directing their attention after they finish reading? So that's what we're going to crank through today. We got a lot to get through.
All right, let's kick it off. Cole, we get this question from the very first day of Ship 30 of why aren't we writing Twitter threads? Why are we writing atomic essays? So how would you answer that? And what are some kind of the basic differences and explanation for why we start with atomic essays?
The easiest way of thinking about it is digital writing is a language. Okay, so the same way that you took English class in high school or college, right? And they kind of teach you this old way of thinking about writing. Digital writing has different rules, and that's what we've been talking about. We talk about the importance of headlines, we talk about prepping the page, using formatting, using subheads to bring the reader's attention down, right? There's all these different mechanisms on how people read differently on the internet. Twitter threads or writing on, or a LinkedIn post or a Quora answer, or sometimes even a Medium article are like sub languages of digital writing. right? Each platform has its own nuances. And it's really difficult if you're brand new to writing online, or even if you've been doing it for a while and you haven't really seen much traction. It's really hard to go straight into, well, let's just talk only about Twitter threads. Because the reality is we need first kind of a baseline understanding of how do headlines work? How does formatting work? What are some of the proven writing rhythms? How do you organize your ideas? How do you come up with ideas, right? These are all the foundational skills. So we covered those in the first weeks of Ship 30, and then we go into these sub languages. And so some of these differences, right, are Twitter threads are harder to execute. Atomic essays are more universal. If you can write an atomic essay, you can write an email. Same things are true for landing pages. A lot of basics for even website copy. Like there's a lot of universal skills there. Twitter threads are way more specific, way more niche, and they're harder to execute. There's more nuances to them. And on top of that, atomic essays, you can repurpose a gazillion different ways. You can take an atomic essay and you can just throw it right on Medium. You can post it as a Quora answer. You can share the image on Twitter. You can copy paste it on LinkedIn. You can put it in an email. But with a Twitter thread, it's like if you write a Twitter thread, it kind of only works for Twitter, and that's it. So that's why we need to start with the basics and then go into some of these sub languages.
Yep. And once you have 15 atomic essays under your belt, you have such a grasp of the fundamentals that any writing platform that comes up, you're going to be able to adapt. A Twitter thread is just a different medium that you're going to explore, but headlines, formatting, ideas, they're all the same. You could think of Twitter threads almost like a YouTube video. That's basically how different they are as a medium of communication, right? You wouldn't say, hey, I want to take a writing course and we're just going to dive into making YouTube videos from the beginning. That's basically what would happen if we dove in and just wrote Twitter threads, because then you can't apply it anywhere else. You got to learn the fundamentals, then you can apply it everywhere. And that's why we do it.
So maybe, Dickie, you want to break down this monster of a thread of yours, how this worked, how many followers you had at the time, why, like the benefit of Twitter threads.
So what Twitter threads do allow for, and atomic essays allow for, this is really just writing on social environments. This thread was seen by 4.7 million people. Now, a lot of these threads have popped up over the last year of advanced tips and tricks and things like that, because this was the original kind of Twitter advanced tips thread. And I, at the time, had, I think, 7,000 followers, something like that. Nothing crazy, but 4.7 million people saw it. And this was when I realized the power of a viral platform. Very few blog posts, maybe any blog posts, get 4.7 million views. And this got 4.7 million views spread everywhere. And we put this on here because social platforms reward content over followers. So you can have one follower and write something and have it go viral. And that's part of the reason we do this. And I just like to share these numbers because they're kind of absurd when you see them.
Yeah, I think let's just pause for a second and explain this, because I think not very many people understand how social platforms actually work now. So every time we kind of get to this point in Ship 30, we talk about, okay, well, here's how you write things that get seen by a lot of people. And immediately the first response that we often hear is, but I don't have an audience, right? So it's this idea of, but I don't already have 100,000 people following me. So how am I going to write anything that performs well? What most people don't understand about social platforms is that it has almost nothing to do with how many people follow you. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you have 1 follower or 1 million followers. The mechanism is the same. And so what happens is you hit publish, and it's all based on a ratio. Okay. So you hit publish and the algorithm pushes your content into the feed. And in that feed, it shows it to like 20 people. Right? A super small number. And based on the percentage of the number of people who engage with the post, the algorithm goes, hey, 15 out of 20 people liked that. I'm going to now show it to 100 people. And then based on that group, it goes, hey, 50 out of 100 people liked that. I'm going to show it to 1,000 people. 500 people out of 1,000 liked that. I'm going to show it to 10,000 people, right? So it doesn't matter if you have 1 million followers or 1 follower. It's still going through the same process, which is how Dickie with 6,000 followers writes something that gets seen by 4.7 million people. Or just like how if I have 100,000 followers, not everything I write gets seen by 100,000 people. And so it's really important to understand that this is how it works, where it's literally a roulette game. Everyone has the same level of chance. So the only thing that you have control over is whether you hit publish or not.
And we all have control over hidden publish. So we put this on here just to reinforce the fact that you do not need a big following to write successfully on social platforms. It's going to show it to a lot of people, especially LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, is even better of a distribution. My first post on LinkedIn to this day is still my most popular, and I had no followers, zero followers. But what I did was my most popular tweet from Twitter. So I took it, put it on LinkedIn, and bang, it took off.
Yeah. So that's what these are. And here's a LinkedIn example. The same thing.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the big things that, I think we both said this maybe a month or two ago, but someone was like, what's your LinkedIn strategy? Well, the LinkedIn strategy is to copy paste everything from Twitter. If as long as you create it, as long as you write it, it's yours to do whatever you want with it. You can put it on LinkedIn, you can put it on Medium, you can put it on your site, you can put it in an atomic essay. It's yours, right? You own it. So what we're going to walk you through is how to assemble this different sort of digital writing in a way where it not only performs well on Twitter, but it's also very easy to copy paste and also put on LinkedIn. That way, if you want to play with both platforms, you can maximize it without having to constantly rewrite and kind of change all the different things. So what's a starting point? Do you have an atomic essay? If you have one, something that you wrote in the past week, drop in the chat real quick. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk you through how you might take an atomic essay or an existing idea and restructure it in the format of a Twitter thread. And then the little nuanced differences between publishing on Twitter and publishing on LinkedIn. Does anyone have any essays that they want to share the link too, so that way people can bounce around and check out your essays? But if you have one that you want to workshop, keep that open in a tab. And so as we go through it, you can kind of see which ideas you're going to bring over to the Twitter thread.
Go for it.
So here's the basic architecture of a Twitter thread. Okay. A lot of them, if not 95% of them, all have the same structure. And the structure looks like this. You have a lead-in tweet, which is your hook. This is your mini sales pitch saying, here's why you should read this. Okay. And there's a bunch of nuances around how to get the reader's attention, which we'll walk through. Then in the middle sandwich of the tweets, right? Tweets 2 through 7 or 2 through 5 or 2 through 10, whatever the bulk of your thread is. Each one of those tweets is a different point. So think of each tweet when you write an atomic essay, your big subhead that's kind of grouping sections together. Think of each section as its own tweet in your thread. That's how you want to stack them. So each tweet is like its own section, and it's best if each section is its own idea, right? Because then the reader can just skim through and go, oh, that's the idea I want to read, right? The second to last tweet, you do a little recap. You go, hey, here's a quick summary of everything I just explained to you. Usually the best way of doing this is in a quick bulleted list or a quick numbered list, right? I just told you these 5 things. Here's the 5 things one more time so you don't forget. Makes it easy for people to share, makes it easy to bookmark, things like that. And then at the very end, you have a CTA, right? So you just wrote all of this. Now, where do you want to drive the reader's attention? You want to send them to another piece you wrote. You want to send them to your newsletter. You want to send them to your website. You want to send them to a digital product. Where do you want to drive the reader's attention?
And that's the whole goal here, is recognizing that a Twitter thread is assembled, just like an atomic essay is assembled with individual pieces. This is when you sit down, it's today I'm going to write my lead in. I'm going to think about my main points. I'm going to think about my recap, and then I'm going to send the reader somewhere on the back of it.
That's all. And you can see how you would prep the page with this too, right? You could inside type share when you're writing, you can just go, okay, well, what's my hook idea? What are my 5 points? How would I put those 5 points in a quick bulleted list? And then where do I want to send the reader afterwards? Right? You can prep the page just by looking at this. Now, the difference between Twitter threads and LinkedIn posts is that the lead-in has typically a little bit less space. So this is the nuance that we want to point out. If you can see here on this screenshot, do you see this little ... see more? Okay. So what that's doing is, because LinkedIn is all one post, right? Whereas Twitter is connected tweets. Since LinkedIn is all one post, it's showing people in their feed only the first 4 or 5 lines before the rest of it, right? So you have to think, how does the algorithm work? The algorithm goes, we're going to show a reader the first 5 lines. And if they click see more, that means they're interested. That means you hooked them, right? And if the algorithm sees lots of people clicking see more, it goes, lots of people are interested in this. We're going to show it to more people, right? So the whole game with both Twitter and LinkedIn is, how do you grab the reader's attention in the first 5 lines? That's what dictates the success of the post.
And so you can see here that it's almost a perfect combination of writing a headline and a first sentence opener. You're going to combine those frameworks to basically say, I'm going to somehow get this reader who is scrolling Twitter and LinkedIn to say, I'm going to stop, click, and read. That's your goal. And so we'll talk about the lead in and each of these pieces individually as we go.
Yeah. And just Mitko, I see the question in the chat. Yeah, for LinkedIn, it's 5 lines. So when you're writing, every time you go to a next line, it's 5 lines, including the spaces, right? So you can see in 2009 here, first line, changed, second line, blank space, third line, here's how, fourth line. And then there's a space under there, right, before the next thing, which is why Seymour has chopped it off. So it's just easy to ballpark, but ultimately what you want is, you just want, what is the first 1 or 2 sentences that makes the reader go, I got to read this, right? And the same thing for Twitter. It only shows you the first tweet, right? It doesn't show you the whole thread. It only shows you the first tweet. So you go, how do I get the reader's attention with just the first tweet? So this is what we call the lead in, okay? The lead in is your mini sales pitch. It's your hook. So in order for the reader to go, because I like using this example, right? When you're asking someone to read, you're not just saying, read my Twitter thread. What you're literally saying is, give me 2 minutes of your life. So imagine someone stops you on the street and goes, hey, can I take 2 minutes off your life? You'd be like, no, I value my life very much, right? But when we scroll and we consume content, we don't think about it that way. So your lead-in tweet is asking someone, give me 2 minutes of your life. And so in order for the reader to feel good about that exchange, you need to answer some questions, right? What is this about? Who is this for? Is it for me? What is the reader going to get in exchange? If I give you 2 minutes of my life, what are you going to give me back? Right? Why should I trust you? Why is this worth 2 minutes of my life? What's the transformation? How am I different? So maybe, Dickie, you want to break down this lead in and kind of point this out for people?
Yeah. So as you look at this, hopefully you've been paying attention the first few weeks and you can spot some of the key headline and first sentence opener theory that we talk about, right? So one of the most legendary marketers of all time, David Ogilvy. What kind of one sentence opener? It's a strong declarative statement, right? He's one of the most legendary marketers of all time, David Ogilvy, right? A little bit of borrowed credibility here. I'm not one of the most legendary marketers. I'm talking about David Ogilvy. Then in 1982, that little 2-word intro of in 1982, David wrote an internal memo to the employees of his advertising agency titled How to Write. So just like that, I've executed. If someone's read those first 2 lines, they're probably on to the next thing. And then in just 10 bullets, he put together a masterclass. Here's a breakdown. basically making a promise to the reader. Here's what you're going to learn. So strong declarative first sentence opener, moment in time, and then a clear, here's what you're going to get promised to the reader.
So as the reader, right, why would I want to read this? I want to learn how to write from one of the most legendary marketers of all time. I don't want to spend 10 hours learning how to write from that person. I want just 10 quick bullets. And thank you for organizing all of that for me right here. This seems like 2 minutes of my life that's worth it, right? You can see how all those questions get answered for the reader to make them go, okay, I'm game. Now, to draw the parallel, right? How do you then look at this and apply it to your own niche? Okay, if you write about yoga, thread, one of the most legendary yoga instructors of all time, name, right? If you write about chemistry, one of the most legendary chemists of all time, name. If you write about small businesses, right? One of the most legendary small business owners of all time, name, right? One of the biggest benefits of TypeShare and why we share these templates is so that you can then look at other people's content and go, oh, how would I do that? Right? So everyone looking at this right now, you should make a note to yourself and go, how would I write my version of this thread? What's your niche? Who's someone legendary that you could borrow credibility from? And what would be your version of this thread? Super easy.
Yeah. And so if you have one of those, drop in the chat as we move on to the next one.
So then the same thing is true for LinkedIn. Okay. It's, LinkedIn, we were talking about kind of, you have this 5-line rule. Again, don't overcomplicate it. Like 4 or 5 lines, right? All you got to focus on is get it as quickly as possible for the reader. So again, they need to know, what is this about? Who is this for? Right? Why should I trust you? So look at this great lead-in tweet from Justin Welch. A LinkedIn audience is a massive asset. Strong declarative sentence, right? I've added 70,696 followers in just 20 weeks. Credibility. Here's why you should listen to me. Here are the 5 simple things I do. Okay, if you read this, I'm going to tell you the 5 simple things you should do. Right? It's very basic. So once you learn these mechanisms, you can apply them however you want. It's just you need to get to the point instantly in order for the reader to go, okay, this is worth my time.
What the best part about templates are is you become a more involved reader, where if we can do anything in Chip 30, it's to take you from this consumption mindset to the creator mindset. So anytime you come across something that works, you go, how can I apply that? How can I make that work for me instead of just doom scrolling, right? You go into Twitter and you use it with intention, saying, I'm going to find these things that are working. Bang, I'm going to apply it to my niche. I'm going to sit down the next day. I'm going to write it. I'm going to post it. And then you get all the benefits of the algorithms and robots working for you 24/7.
Exactly. So let's do, my dog's excited. So let's do a version of this. Okay. Here's how it appears differently between Twitter and LinkedIn. The top is Twitter. The bottom is LinkedIn. So notice how if I had taken the exact tweet from Twitter and put it on LinkedIn, it would have gotten cut off, right? And so in order to make it work on LinkedIn, you have this tiny little nuance. You have a little opportunity where you can rewrite it a little bit so that it gets to the point even faster, right? In order to do that, you need to ask yourself, okay, well, what can I remove? What do I not need to be part of it so that I can get the reader in the first 2 sentences, right? So that's really the only nuance is you can copy paste the same content on both platforms, but you want to ask yourself, how do you make it fit so that on LinkedIn, it gets there even faster because you have a little bit less space.
The takeaway from this tweet here and this exact example is most people who came across Cole's second post here, the LinkedIn post, wouldn't understand that this is like a long form piece. They wouldn't, just because it says see more, they would just scroll right past it. Like it sounds like Cole's just making a statement versus if he just cut out, they should have been blog posts and said, save yourself time and just read these 10 as the line that says, here's something, read these 10, they'll click see more. You guys see, that makes sense. Can you drop in the chat? Just that makes sense. That's what we're trying to illustrate with this is you have to be mindful about what your lead in is. So you're making sure that the see more button is right after some kind of cliffhanging hook.
Yeah.
We're getting into the nitty gritty of digital writing here, right? You know the fundamentals, but this is the kind of stuff that takes it from an average post to something that takes off. Because again, how the algorithm works is they're going to say, wow, I showed this to 100 people and 90 of them clicked see more. That must mean, and you got to put yourself in the shoes of the algorithm, that means they're spending more time on the platform reading. I should go show that to more people.
Mm-hmm. This is what copywriting is all about. Copywriting is all about the thinking of what is most compelling to the reader to get them to click. That's the whole game. Okay. So, Dickie, these are two of my favorite hooks of yours. And notice, I love the first one especially, is notice how much he's twisting the knife. How to generate 100 ideas to write about in 30 minutes, even if you think you have nothing to say, right? It could have been a fine lead in to just say how to generate 100 ideas. But then it gets taken to level 2 by going in 30 minutes. And then it gets taken to level 3 by going, even if you think you have nothing to say, right? You're confronting the reader's objections before they even start reading. That's the key.
And I always love during this one when someone goes, that's the thread where I found out about Dickie or Ship 30 or something like that, because it always comes full circle. But you can see here all these principles in action. This is just a long headline, right? How to blank in blank without blank, or even if blank. So it's a very specific so that, right? And then the second one, it's what we illustrate here are there's always kind of a rotating popular lead in that starts working, everyone starts using, and then you got to, keep moving on. And these are some of the things we share every Friday in the captain's table is what the cutting edge is, right? That way you're always kind of staying, whether it's a new LinkedIn format, a new Twitter thread format that we're exploring, some kind of tactic that, because you can't, if you've seen you play this game enough, there's things that go up and down and they come back full circle. So we're just showing a couple examples here that do a good job of getting the reader's attention, and both of these had pretty good success.
Yeah, and a lot of the templates in TypeShare, we try and bake the hook right into the template. So all you're doing is you're inserting your niche, but the idea of the hook, like the psychology of it, is already there, because there's just proven hooks. There's things that grab people's attention, right? You kind of can't help but want to read about it. So the first part is how you get the reader engaged. The second part then is the formatting of the main points. And I often find this is both the easiest 10x upgrade and also the most common mistake that people make is they get the lead in, but then you get into their thread and it's just these big blocky paragraphs. It's kind of like they just copy pasted their atomic essay and just, it's just these huge walls of text. And the key with formatting a post in a Twitter thread or a LinkedIn post is to compress things. You want single sentences, you want bulleted lists, you want numbered lists, you want boom, 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 boom. That's what you're going for the reader.
This is, we hear this a lot of, if you're on a Mac, option 8 is how you create bullet points. It's the easiest way to have a more aesthetic tweet. We often find people say that alone is worth Ship 30's price of admission now that you know how to make bullets on your Mac. So you should never make a list with dashes when bullets are available. And 131, one sentence, 3 bullets, 1 sentence. You'll see me use that a lot. It's the same way. And I'm not sure exactly if Alt 7 is exactly what it is on Mac. It might be different. I think I got that one wrong. But either way, this is, again, goes back to the fundamentals, right? If you know how to format something for readability, you're not going to have a big blocky wall of text. You're instead just going to put something down that is readable.
So here's just to see what this looks like, right? Notice the difference between left and right. On the right, you have we got the title, right? The first sentence that kind of is like, hey, here's the subhead, here's the main point. But then it's just this big wall of text. And that's what you want to avoid. When a reader sees that, literally, if it's only 5 lines, the reader's saying to themselves, that's exhausting, right? That's just where we're at. Okay. So you need to make it as easy as possible for the reader to skim their way through. So how do you do that? Usually in your main points, it's nice for the first sentence to be the idea or the numbered thing, or whatever you're listing, or the tip, right? It's think of the first sentence as your title for that tweet. Then you want to go, how can you go 1-3-1? 1 sentence, 3 bullets, 1 sentence, or here, 1 sentence, 3 bullets, 1 sentence, right? You want to, as much as possible, try and space things out versus here's a wall of text. Okay. You can notice the same thing here on LinkedIn, right? A lot of times I see really smart, like really great posts that had potential go nowhere on LinkedIn because they're formatted like the one on the right. They're written as if you're reading like an Atlantic article. That's not how people read on social platforms, right? So you need to break it out. And it's not just, oh, everything's a single sentence. It's about grouping things together, right? You want to think of containers. That's your job as a digital writer. You're creating containers for the reader to go, oh, this is great. I can just skim my way through.
Empathetic writing. It just goes back to that, right? How can I make this easier to consume, right? Put yourself in the mind of the reader. How can I make this easier for them to read?
Yeah. And there's always new ways of doing it. You can do it with dashes. You can do it with all caps, subheads or titles. You can do it with little asterisks. You can do it with an emoji starting the sentence. Like, you have to find what works for you. The important thing is, are you consciously constructing containers so that the reader goes, oh, that's the point I was looking for, and they can fly through it. That's the goal. So real quick, drop in the chat. If you've tried doing this in the past, what's been the sticking point? Is it brevity? Is it the organization of the ideas? Is it understanding visually how to assemble things? Formatting, what doesn't get talked about a lot in digital writing is how much readers read visually, right? They don't read necessarily every single word, right? They read it like a picture. Your eyes take in the whole thing. And so the biggest skill that you can build as a digital writer is how to assemble things that look beautiful, right? When you see a clean, like 1 sentence, 3 bullets, 1 sentence, as a reader, you can't help but be like, oh my gosh, that just looks so appealing, right? That's so satisfying. So that's the skill that we want you to build, is how to assemble things visually.
All right, let's keep cruising here. The way to finish up a Twitter thread is to have some kind of recap, right? The reader you hook them, you deliver them value, and then they get to the bottom and you probably gave them so much that they don't even know they might have flown through it. Give them a recap. Give them a little sandwich of, here's exactly what you just covered. TLDR stands for too long, didn't read. It's just a kind of nerdy way of saying, here's the summary. And here, look at the aesthetics and formatting of this tweet. Bullet points, an extending line, each bullet longer than the other. It's just pleasant on the eye to read, and that's what gets engagement. There's these little things that you can play with. So when you get to the end, it's very easy. You're not running out of room like you might on an atomic essay where you just cut the conclusion because you don't want it to spill over and be too long. You always have room to give a recap on a Twitter thread. So drop in summary or to recap or TLDR, something like that, and go make sure the reader knows exactly what you just covered. And honestly, I start a lot of my threads with this tweet where I said, here's exactly what I just shared. Now I'm just going, it's kind of like writing a headline. You know exactly what you just gave the reader. Now you need to just go fill in the lines.
That's a great point. Yeah. Before you go write a whole thread or a long LinkedIn post, you should be able to assemble this list, right? Because this list is your outline. This list is your skeleton. So if you can write the recap tweet first, you then know, oh, well, my thread is just expanding on this thing, right? And seriously, it's such a small thing, but people gloss over it all the time. One of the easiest upgrades to your writing is when you build bulleted or numbered lists like this, make the text expand over time. This would be such a frustrating tweet to read if it was like short sentence, short, long, long, short, short, long, long, short, right? But notice how you start with the shortest points and then they get longer and longer. So every time whenever I'm assembling a bulleted list, I just make the list and then I rearrange them based on short to long or long to short.
I should probably do that instead. I just start making the list, and like as I'm going down, I find a way to add words to each point to make it longer. So, but then I'll like wordsmith and move it back. But again, little upgrades, they go a long way in empathetic writing and reading.
That's right.
Lastly, yeah,
go for
the
it.
CTA, very simply, the call to action. You just delivered a big nugget of value. They're reading all your stuff. What do you tell them to do? You can say, hey, follow me for more tweets like this. You can send them to another thread. You can send them back up to the top. Give them something where if they get there, you know the only person reading it is someone that consumed your entire thread. They love your stuff now. How do you get them to follow you, read your other things? There's a lot here. We just think always end with a recap and a, hey, follow me if you enjoyed this. Very easy.
Yep. And there's some nuances with the LinkedIn CTA. In general, if you can, you want to if you want to post any other links on LinkedIn, you want them to be as a comment to your post, right? And so what that does is it makes it very easy for people to read the post, right? And then they go to the bottom and then they see the link posted as a comment. So whenever you see people doing this on LinkedIn, that's what they're doing. This is their version of the CTA.
Yep. And we're about to drop this feature in TypeShare in the next couple weeks.
So just to recap, right, your architecture is hook, main points, recap, CTA. And this is how 95% of all Twitter threads are assembled. Like it's just the same structure. It's kind of like writing an article, right? It just follows its same general structure. So personally, like Dickie said, I think it's best to start with the recap. Start with what are all my points, right? That helps you prep the page. And then go spend a bunch of time on the hook, right? Because it's all about what is the reader going to find most interesting? What do they value the most, right? And then the same thing is true for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the lead-in. You write it all the way through. You have your main points. And then when you want to post a CTA, you post it as a comment on the original post.
And there you go. Just like that, you have the fundamentals of Twitter threads and LinkedIn posts. Now, why don't we dive into some of the topics that work well for these?
So not every topic works in a Twitter thread, and not every topic works as a LinkedIn post. There's certain types of ideas that are better suited for those formats, right? Because those formats are things that people are reading quickly, and there's more of a focus on brevity and compression versus like long explanation, right? These are not formats that lend themselves well to description. So you have frameworks, stories, actionable tips, listing just about anything. And then on Twitter, you have this unique thing that happens over time where you can write these threads of threads. So to go through them, a framework is like, it's a breakdown of some sort. It's here's how this works. Here's a way of thinking about it, right? But in order to explain a framework, you still have to touch on, okay, well, what are the main points of the framework, right? How does it work? When would you use this? Who is it for, right? So you want to think of each tweet or each section as, well, what's the different thing that I need to explain on this framework? And so do you have a specific way of solving a problem? You know, why is this different compared to everything else that people have seen? Why should people listen to you? Frameworks are the hardest to fit into a Twitter thread because they kind of require more explanation. So yeah, if you can make your main points, here's all the different parts of your framework, then it feels really nice, neat, and assembled.
Frameworks are just an easy one. So here again, 9 writing frameworks that cost you nothing. And I hope as you look at these lead-ins, you're digging into your toolkit of first sentence openers, strong declarative statements, twisting the knife, clear promises, right? They all come together, all the fundamentals we talked about in the first 2 weeks to kind of put together with a lead in like this.
Yes, exactly. So the second is stories. Stories are there when you nail a story, especially in a thread or a LinkedIn post, it is really cool. They are hard to execute. But the key to writing a story, there's two big things. One is in the lead-in tweet, you need to signal the beginning and the end of the journey. So here's a great example. When Steve Ballmer joined Microsoft in 1980, he was employee number 30 and received 0 equity. Beginning, right? But by its IPO in 1986, he owned 8% of Microsoft, which makes up the majority of his $80 billion fortune today. End. Beginning and end, right? How did that happen? Click to find out, right? This is the whole key to writing a story. And most people write a story where they go, here's the beginning. Now click to keep reading, right? And the reader goes, well, I have no idea where we're going, right? You need to tell the reader, here's where we're starting. Here's where we're going to end up. Now click to find out how it happens, right? So that's the first big thing you need to nail when you're writing a story.
It's really worth double clicking on that point, because every single story that I can't remember, it might have been Jim Collins. I can't remember where I got this quote, but when you don't tell a reader where they're going, they're not even going to get started. And he compared it to, if I said, show up to the gym tomorrow and we're just going to work out. And I don't tell you what type of workout it is. I don't tell you how long it's going to be. We're just going to start doing push-ups. You'd probably go, hell no. Like, I don't want to do this. But if I say, hey, we got a 30-minute workout, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then I got a little special thing in the middle, you'd probably be like, oh, now I'm kind of interested. And so the same thing with your stories. You want to lay out the beginning, show some kind of the end, and say, I'm going to show you how this journey got here. And instead of just saying, here's the end or here's the beginning, people click to read to figure out how it happened.
Yep. And then
Jerry
your
Seinfeld. Yep.
Yeah. And then your job is when you're telling the story, right? You're not just telling the story. In order to make it work inside a Twitter thread, every tweet needs to be, what's the next big moment, right? Every tweet needs to be, and then what happened? And then what happened? And then what happened, right? It's almost like writing a serial like mystery, and you can do it in any genre you want, but every tweet needs to advance the reader forward. Otherwise, the reader's like, you just took 2 tweets to describe something. I'm bored, right? It literally, that's the thought process. So these are, I mean, Dickie, the one on the left, I think, is one of my favorites of all time.
And honestly, this one, I love it, but every time I look at it, it could be better formatted. It could use bullet points, but I ran for class president. What followed was 2 landslide victories, an impeachment trial, pitchforks from 3 suburban housewives, and 3 marketing frameworks I'll never forget. A little bit of a mouthful, and I'm probably going to go rewrite this exact thread because it's one of my most fun stories. But see how I'm teasing the beginning and end? I don't just say, I ran for class president, here's the story, or I was once chased by suburban housewives with pitchforks. Like, I give some context. I say where we're going. I say what's in it for them at the end, right? 3 marketing frameworks. I'm not just telling a story. I'm telling a story with actionable lessons. And the click-through rate on this was really big. This was back, I didn't have a very big following at all at the time on this one. Same with the thing on the right. I used to have a severe addiction planning, right? Kind of a like, oh, that, shake up a little bit. It's not a controversial statement, but
unconventional,
unconventional, weird, unique insight paired with like a vulnerable statement. And then what ended it? This story. Click to read the story, right? Beginning, end. Now read the story to figure out the middle.
Your lead-in tweet is the movie trailer, and you gotta tell the reader where they're going. Challenge question for the lead-in hook on the left. If Dickie was to rewrite the class president lead-in tweet, what would change? Throw it in the chat real quick. You got 20 seconds. If Dickie was to rewrite the lead-in tweet, what would he do? Yeah, he's listing out a bunch of stuff, right? 2 landslide victories, impeachment trial, pitchforks from housewives, and 3 marketing frameworks. 4 bullets. Boom. Super easy, right? So you should always be asking yourself, how can I get rid of the wall of text and compress it?
Yep. And I would even say this was great. Someone said add a year. I would switch the beginning order. I would say during my senior year of high school, moment in time, I ran for class president. What followed was : 2, an impeachment trial, pitchforks, 3 marketing frameworks. Here's the story.
Yes. Because then the reader's eyes can take in all of that at the same time. Right? Versus I have to linearly read a paragraph. No one has time for that. There's cat videos on YouTube. I'm busy. Right?
And that was 2014. I was a senior in high school, I think. So in 2014. There you go. There's the year.
Yeah, there's your moment in time. Okay, then the easier way of assembling Twitter threads and LinkedIn posts are things like tips, right? I'm going to give you the 7 tips, the 6 ways, the 5 mistakes, right? Actionable tips help people assemble ideas very easily, right? It's one thing if I go, I'm just going to explain the whole world of digital writing to you versus here's the 10 digital writing frameworks, the 10 tips that you need to execute tomorrow in order to be successful, right? One feels way more actionable than the other. So anytime you're trying to explain something, you want to ask yourself, how can you break it down into, well, here's some tips, here's some steps, here's some things to avoid, here's some mistakes I made, right? You want to make it more actionable for the reader.
Easy tips, mistakes, lessons, all that right there. Let's keep rolling.
So here's a great example. I write about little writing tips. And then over time I go, hey, here's 19 writing tips, right? You go, oh, great. I want 19 writing tips that help me do X, Y, Z, right? The modified version of this is then going, well, if I can list out tips and mistakes and lessons and all of these things, what are all the other things I can list, right? And this is where your niche becomes endless. What are the books people should read? What are the YouTube videos they should watch? What are the podcast episodes they should listen to, right? What are all the things, if I write about writing, what are all the libraries all over the world that someone should go visit? What are all the coolest coffee shops in Chicago where people can go, where writers can go write, right? Anything you can list is perfect for a Twitter thread or a LinkedIn post.
Spot on. Anything that is 1 to 10, Twitter threads fit perfectly because you have an individual tweet or LinkedIn posts, right? Individual, add two lines between. It's listicles. Yep. And exactly right.
And just because it's in a list doesn't mean it's not valuable,
No.
right? You're just making it easy for the reader to go, oh, I want those 10 things. Thank you for grouping them together for me, right? That's it. And then over time, the more you write on Twitter, this really cool thing happens where you can start writing threads that organize all your other threads, or you can write threads that organize your and other people's threads, right? So here in this lead-in tweet, I said over the past year, I've written dozens of 101 threads covering everything from ghostwriting to freelance writing to self-publishing, all these things that have to do with writing. But out of all of those, these 14 threads accumulated more than 5 million views. You should read these. So this becomes this very meta layer where you can start then drawing attention to parts of your library grouped by topic, grouped by category, grouped by problem you're solving, grouped by audience, right? You're just going, here's all the threads on this topic. Here's all the threads on this topic. And that's how then you create this flywheel where all of your Twitter content just keeps going and going and going.
It's a web, right? Someone can't possibly come to your profile and not get sucked down the rabbit hole of all your content, right? When you do a good job connecting it, that's the beauty of building a library. So you've built a bit of a library already in the first 18 days of Ship 30. You probably have a couple of ways you could group things together, and we'll show you how to do that later.
Yep. So real quick, which one of these either have you tried already or did you gravitate to while we were explaining it? You know, are you I've got my own frameworks, I want to write about it. Do you have stories you want to tell? You know, do you immediately have things you could break apart into actionable tips? You know, can you make lists of things grouped by topic category? Yeah, all of these are awesome. The answer is you should find a way to try and do all of them. You'll probably notice that there's one or two that you're better at or that you enjoy more. You know, like the majority of the threads I write are actionable tips or anything lists. Every once in a while, I'll do a framework, and I very rarely do stories, but they all work and they all can be tools in your toolkit.
Spot on. So let's recap a little bit. Go ahead and drop in the chat. What was your golden nugget from this session? Is it the different types of Twitter threads that work? Is it the CTA? Is it learning how to make a bullet point? Is it the difference between LinkedIn and Twitter lead-in tweets, writing hooks, the fact that this is its own language, the difference between thread or atomic essay, all that? Think about, this is one of those that it really pays to go and read the text-based curriculum after. We fly through a ton here. And so that's there for you. If you want a deep dive into writing lead-in tweets for Twitter and LinkedIn, the deep dive this week or with this live session is worth an hour of your time to kind of soak on. And then, as always, you get to watch this all again. So I know we fly through this one. There's a lot here. We could teach an entire 30-day course on just writing Twitter threads. And we have a lot of those in our Build Your Audience on Autopilot Captain's Table Challenge, which you'll learn a little bit more about on Wednesday, Thursday this week. But other than that, Cole, if you want to jump to how they can claim their badge, which is 2 slides after this one. So to claim your badge today, you will comment with either an idea or a link to your first Twitter thread. And then, as always, you can read the deep dive, read the text-based curriculum, and we hope you start writing some Twitter threads in the next week. You can put all your frameworks into practice. On Friday, we're going to dig into analytics, how you can analyze your first 21 days of atomic essays. And Cole, you think I missed anything?
No, it's just, I want to remind everyone, all of these are skills, right? It's not like someone explains to you how to play the violin and you wake up tomorrow morning and now you can play the violin, right? You have to practice the skill. And so when Dickie and I were first starting, it took me a while to figure out how threads worked. You know, obviously our hope is to really shorten that learning curve for you, but writing threads is a whole other language. Writing compelling LinkedIn posts that really engage readers all the way down the page is its own language, you know? So don't just write the first one and go, well, I didn't get 5 million views. I guess threads are broken and Dickie and Cole are wrong, right? Your takeaway should be try it, learn it, practice it, use the templates in TypeShare and acquire that skill. And then you become, I want to write more about this idea of being a full stack digital writer. You know, you don't just know how to write atomic essays. You also know how to write threads. You also know how to write LinkedIn posts. You also know how to write newsletters, right? There's all of these other little sub languages of digital writing. That's our goal here.
Yep. And so we throw a lot at you. Understand that I've been writing Twitter threads now for 2 years and I'm still learning. So you got a lot of a foundation set in the first 2 weeks. We're starting to show you some advanced things because, to be honest, if you're showing up still, you're crushing it, writing every single day, we want to get you more advanced because you're clearly looking to take things to the next level here. So that's why we start to accelerate even more in the back half of the course, which is fun. You have access to this forever, of course. So, all right, let's do some breakout rooms. What we're going to do is the same thing we did on Saturday, where we're going to set a 30-40 minute time limit, but we're not going to come back here after. So once your breakout room is finished, you can just leave. Make sure you follow one another on Twitter. We're not going to do any after parties or anything. That way you have plenty of time to finish. We found that we were cutting some people off when we'd finish at 30 minutes. They want a little bit more time to jam. We want to make sure you have time for that. So we're going to dive into some breakout rooms. That's all we got for today. We'll see everyone on Friday for Analytics 101. Be on the lookout for early Captain's Table invitations. We're very excited to roll those out. And I will see everyone on Friday.
Epic.